Have you ever wondered how the mighty Yadu dynasty, the lineage of Lord Krishna, met its tragic and fateful end? This story, rooted in the Mausala Parva of the Mahabharata, unravels the intertwined threads of destiny, arrogance, divine will, and the inescapable cycle of karma. As described in the Mahabharata's Mausala Parva, 36 years after the great Kshetra war, King Yudhishthira began to witness a series of ominous events. A strong, dry wind filled with gravel blew fiercely from all directions. Pebbles and stones rained from the sky, flocks of birds flew in unusual circles from right to left. The great rivers lost their flow, their waters buried beneath sand, and a thick fog covered all directions. Meteors began to fall, showering the earth with burning coals. The sun, covered in dust, lost its brightness at sunrise, and strange headless torsos appeared in its orbit. Bright rings of light surrounded both the sun and the moon daily, their edges glowing in three strange colors: red, black, and grey. These and many other frightening events unfolded, creating an atmosphere of fear and unease. A few days later, Yudhishthira received the devastating news that the entire Vrishni clan had been destroyed by the iron pestle, leaving only Krishna and Balarama alive. Hearing this, the Pandavas were deeply distressed by the destruction of the Vrishnis. Overwhelmed with grief and sorrow, they sat in silence, consumed by despair. How did such a powerful dynasty fall? Was it fate, a curse, or human actions? Could this tragedy have been avoided? What led to the downfall of a dynasty guided by Lord Krishna himself? Let us delve into the events that unfolded, unraveling the mysteries behind the fall of the mighty dynasty. Once upon a time, Maharishi Vishwamitra, Kanva, and Narad visited Dwarka. Seeing them, the young princes decided to play a prank on the sages. They dressed Samba, the son of Lord Krishna and Jambavati, as a woman and brought him before the sages. Mockingly, they said, "Maharishis, this person is the wife of Baburu, a man of immeasurable energy. She desires to have a son. Can you tell us what she will give birth to?" The sages, realizing they were being mocked, exchanged angry glances. In their fury, they cursed. "Arrogant fools! This Samba, the son of Krishna, will bring forth a terrible iron pestle that will destroy the men of the Vrishni and Andak clan. Because of the pestle, wicked and arrogant people like you will bring ruin to your entire clan. Only Balaram and Krishna will be spared." Having said this, the sages went to meet Lord Krishna and informed him of what had happened. Lord Krishna, calm and composed, replied simply, "What is destined to happen will come to pass." Being the god of the universe, he was fully aware of the end of the Yaduvanshis, yet he chose not to stop its fate. The next day, Samba produced a pestle, fulfilling the curse of the sages. The Yadavas informed King Ugrasen, who was deeply saddened by the news. The king ordered the pestle to be ground into powder and thrown into the sea. Following the orders of Ugrasen, an announcement was made throughout the city: "No one in Dwarka shall make wine or liquor in the houses. Anyone caught hiding or making such drinks will be punished severely, along with their family." Hearing the announcements, the people of Dwarka stopped making wine or any other kind of intoxicating drinks. However, despite these efforts, Kal began roaming the streets of the city and around the houses every day. His appearance was terrifying, with a black and yellowish body, a bald head, and dreadful clothes. He wandered among the homes of the Vrishnis, sometimes appearing and disappearing at will. The great archers tried to attack him with countless arrows, but none could harm him. Kal was beyond their reach, as he was beyond all specters. Day by day, the city experienced strong winds and bad omens that warned of the coming destruction of the Vrishnis and Andaks. Rats had grown in large numbers and could even be found on the streets, chewing on the hair and nails of sleeping people at night. In the homes of the Yaduvanshis, birds chirped loudly without stopping, both day and night. Saros cranes hooted like owls, goats began to mimic the cries of jackals, and pigeons with white wings and red feet flew in the houses. Strange and unnatural births started happening. Donkeys were born from cows, elephants from mules, cats from dogs, and rats from mongooses. The Yaduvanshis, blinded by pride, no longer felt ashamed of committing wrong deeds. They insulted the gods, their ancestors, Brahmins, and even their elders, showing disrespect to everyone except Balaram and Krishna. When Lord Krishna blew his divine conch, Panchajanya, a dreadful sound echoed, resembling the braying of donkeys from all directions in the city. Seeing these terrible signs, the unfavorable movement of time, and the coincidence of Amavasya on the 13th day of the fortnight, Lord Krishna addressed the Yaduvanshis. The same situation that arose during the Mahabharata war has now appeared again, but this time it is for our own destruction. Thinking about the situation, Lord Krishna realized that these signs marked the passing of 36 years since the war, fulfilling the curse of Gandhari, who had, in her grief, foretold the downfall of the Yaduvanshis. Understanding this, Lord Krishna ordered the Yaduvanshis to go on a pilgrimage. Following Sri Krishna's command, the king's men announced throughout the city that everyone should prepare to go to Prabhas Tirtha on the seashore. During those days of terrible omens, the women of Dwarka often dreamed of a dark-skinned woman with gleaming white teeth, laughing loudly as she ran through the city, stealing the Saubhagya chin, the symbols of married women which indicate good fortune. The men, on the other hand, had horrifying dreams of fierce vultures swooping down, seizing them and devouring them. They also saw dreadful demons stealing their ornaments, parasols, flags, and armor, then vanishing into the distance. These dreams and visions left the Vrishnis and Andhaks deeply troubled, and they decided to leave the city with their families to undertake a pilgrimage to a sacred site. Soon, a large group of distinguished warriors and their families set out from Dwarka, traveling on chariots, horses, and elephants. They all arrived at Prabhas Kshetra, a sacred place on the seashore, and settled in accommodations assigned to them. Uddhav, the wisest man and a master of yoga, as well as a cousin of Lord Krishna, learned that the Yadavas had taken up residence at Prabhas Kshetra. He immediately went to meet them. Lord Krishna, fully aware of the impending destruction of the Yadu dynasty, respectfully bowed to Uddhav with folded hands but did not stop him from leaving. Once the Yadavas had settled at Prabhas Kshetra, they began indulging in intoxicating drinks, and a heated argument broke out among them. In a fit of intoxication, Satyaki insulted Kritvarma, taunting him. Who would dare to call himself a Kshatriya, and yet commit such a cowardly act as killing people in their sleep? The injustice you have done can never be forgiven by the Yadavas. Pradyumna, Lord Krishna's son, supported Satyaki and joined in ridiculing Kritvarma. Hearing these words, Kritvarma became furious. Raising his hand, he responded sharply, "O Satyaki! You speak of bravery, but weren't you the one who killed Bhurishrava after he had already been disarmed? Bhurishrava had vowed to fast unto death, and yet you struck him down in his helpless state. How do you speak of justice now?" Satyaki's anger boiled over. Rising to his feet, he declared, "I swear by truth itself that I will end this sinner today and send him to join Draupadi's sons, Drishtadyumna and Shikhandi, in the afterlife." With these words, Satyaki stormed forward, drew his sword, and, in a moment of rage, severed Kritvarma's head. Not stopping there, he began attacking other warriors as well. Seeing the chaos, Lord Krishna rushed to stop him, but by then, the warriors of the Bhoj and Andhak clans had surrounded Satyaki in retaliation. As the warriors attacked Satyaki, Pradyumna, enraged and determined to protect him, leaped into the fray and began fighting the Bhoj warriors. Satyaki, meanwhile, battled against the Andhaka warriors. Both fought valiantly, displaying tremendous skill and strength. However, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of their enemies, they were eventually overpowered. In the end, both Satyaki and Pradyumna were killed in front of Lord Krishna. Seeing his son Pradyumna and Satyaki killed, Lord Krishna was overcome with rage. He plucked a handful of erka grass, and as soon as it touched his hands, the grass transformed into a fearsome iron pestle, as hard and destructive as a thunderbolt. Wielding this pestle, Krishna began striking down anyone who crossed his path. In their drunken madness, the Yadavas too plucked the erka grass in their rage. To their shock, the grass turned into iron pestles in their hands, and they began attacking each other. Fathers clashed with sons, brothers with brothers, and kin with kin, as the battlefield transformed into a scene of unmatched carnage. Warriors fell lifeless to the ground, akin to moths drawn to a blazing fire, consumed by the raging fire of their own uncontrollable wrath. No one sought to escape, for the curse had blinded them with fury and despair. The erka grass, which played a pivotal role in the annihilation of the Yadavas, had a sinister origin. The iron pestle that had emerged from Samba's stomach, due to the sage's curse, was ground into powder and cast into the sea. Over time, the remnants of the pestle gave rise to the erka grass along the shore. Absorbing the potency of the curse, the grass grew with an unnatural strength, its blades infused with the power to transform into lethal weapons, thus fulfilling the prophecy of destruction. Such was the power of the curse that even a single blade of this grass became a weapon capable of piercing the toughest armor. Before Sri Krishna's eyes, Samba, Charudeshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Gadki all fell lifeless. Witnessing the devastation, Sri Krishna's anger flared up and he annihilated the remaining warriors. When the dust settled, only Krishna, Baburu, and Daruk remained. Baburu and Daruk approached Krishna and said, "Lord, they have all perished. Now, we must find Balramji." Sri Krishna, accompanied by Baburu and Daruk, followed Balram's footprints into the forest. There, under a tree, they found Balram sitting in serene contemplation, lost in thought. Krishna instructed Daruk to leave immediately for Hastinapur to inform Arjuna of the devastating destruction caused by the Brahman's curse and urge him to come to Dwarka without delay. Following Krishna's orders, Daruk mounted his chariot and set off for Hastinapur. Krishna then instructed Baburu to return to Dwarka immediately and ensure the safety of the women. He cautioned that robbers, driven by greed, might harm them. Grief-stricken by the loss of his brothers, Baburu followed Sri Krishna's command and set out for Dwarka. Yet, as he departed, fate intervened. A fragment of the cursed pestle, affixed to the hunter's iron hammer, struck him down, killing him instantly. Witnessing Baburu's death, Krishna turned to Balram and said, "Brother, wait here for me. I will go to Dwarka and ensure the safety of the women by entrusting them to the care of our family until Arjuna arrives." Sri Krishna swiftly made his way to Dwarka and informed his father Vasudev, "Father, protect the women and children until Arjuna arrives. At this moment, brother Balram is waiting for me in the forest. I have seen the destruction of the Yaduvanshis with my own eyes. I can no longer bear to see Dwarkapuri deserted by its heroes." Saying this, he bowed at his father's feet and departed immediately. As Krishna prepared to depart, the women and children of Dwarka began crying and wailing in despair. Hearing their anguished cries, Krishna returned to console them. He reassured them, saying, "Ladies, Arjuna, the best among men, will soon come to this city. He will protect you from all harm." After offering these words of comfort, Lord Krishna left once more. When Krishna reached the forest, he found Balram sitting in deep meditation, absorbed in perfect yogic stillness, his body unmoving and his mind elevated to a divine state of transcendence. As Krishna watched, a majestic white serpent emerged from Balram's mouth, leaving behind the human body it had inhabited. This was none other than Sheshnag, the eternal serpent on whom Lord Vishnu rests. The serpent, luminous with divine radiance and adorned with thousands of brilliant heads, departed towards the ocean. There, the ocean itself, accompanied by celestial serpents and sacred rivers, awaited with reverence to welcome Sheshnag back to his eternal abode. Lord Krishna stood in silence, gazing at the ocean, where his beloved brother had returned to his divine form. The weight of fate and the destruction of the Yadavas bore heavily upon him. Fully aware of the inevitability of all things, Lord Krishna wandered thoughtfully through the desolate forest for some time. Eventually, he sat down on the ground at a quiet spot. Reflecting on Devi Gandhari's curse, he realized that the time had come to leave the mortal world and fulfill the final chapter of his earthly journey. Lord Krishna, the ultimate philosopher, the embodiment of all meanings, and the immortal God, restrained his mind, speech, and senses to ascend to his supreme abode for the protection and balance of the three worlds. After attaining the state of Mahayoga, he lay down peacefully on the earth. At that very moment, a hunter named Zara entered the forest in search of prey. Spotting the glimmer of Krishna's yellow garments from a distance, Zara mistook him for a deer and shot an arrow, which struck the Lord in his foot and wounded him. Believing he had successfully hunted his prey, Zara approached the spot to claim it. However, as he drew closer, he realized with shock and disbelief that it was not a deer but Lord Krishna himself, resplendent with 4 arms, dressed in yellow garments, and immersed in deep yogic tranquility. Overcome with guilt and fear, Zara fell at Lord Krishna's feet, trembling with remorse. Holding the Lord's feet tightly, he begged for forgiveness. The ever-compassionate Sri Krishna assured him that no sin had been committed and that everything had occurred according to divine will. At that moment, Lord Krishna's divine form transcended the earthly realm. His radiant, infinite light pierced through both the sky and the earth, illuminating the entire universe. Leaving behind his mortal body, Lord Krishna ascended to his supreme abode, the eternal Vaikuntha, where he resides as the protector and sustainer of the three worlds. The gods, Gandharvas, Devrishis, Indra, and others honored, praised, and joyfully welcomed the Almighty with heartfelt devotion. Meanwhile, Daruk arrived in Hastinapur and informed the mighty Pandavas that the Yaduvanshis had perished, having slaughtered one another with iron pestles created by the Rishi's curse. Devastated, the Pandavas grieved deeply over the loss. Arjuna, stunned and unable to comprehend the tragedy, immediately set out for Dwarka, accompanied by Daruk. He was struck by the sight before him. The city, once vibrant with divine splendor, now appeared lifeless and abandoned. The golden palaces of Krishna and the Yadavas, which had once dazzled like the sun, now seemed dull, stripped of their former glory. As Arjuna entered the palace, the 16,000 wives of Sri Krishna began crying bitterly upon seeing him. Their wails grew louder, and at the sight of their sorrow, Arjuna's eyes filled with tears. He could not bear to witness the plight of these orphaned, helpless women, deprived of their husbands and sons. Overcome with grief, Arjuna fell to the ground, shedding a stream of tears. Satyabhama, Rukmini, and other queens approached Arjuna, surrounding him in sorrow, crying out loud. In that moment, Arjuna praised Lord Krishna's virtues, recounting his greatness and offering words of comfort to the grieving women. He spoke to them with compassion, trying to soothe their broken hearts. Arjuna then met Vasudeva, Sri Krishna's father, to offer his respect. He found Vasudeva mourning the loss of his sons, grandsons, and the entire Yadav lineage. Arjuna fell at Vasudeva's feet, and the elderly patriarch embraced him with trembling arms. Vasudeva's voice, heavy with sorrow, recounted the tragic events, how the invincible Krishna, who had vanquished countless demons and mighty kings, had chosen not to intervene in the destruction of his own family. Vasudeva explained that this calamity was the result of the curse of the sages, and Krishna, ever bound by divine will, had allowed it to unfold as predestined. With great effort, Vasudeva conveyed Krishna's final message to Arjuna. Krishna came to me and said, "Tell Arjuna about the destruction that has occurred." Arjuna is radiant and resolute. I have no doubt that as soon as he learns of the destruction of the Yaduvanshis, he will come here. Do what Arjuna says. He will ensure the protection of the women and children and will also perform your last rites. Remember this, I am Arjuna, and Arjuna is me. Once Arjuna departs, the ocean will engulf this city of Dwarka, along with its boundary walls and towering structures. I will remain in a sacred place, waiting for my final moments alongside my brother Balarama. It is fortunate that you have come here. Now, do whatever Krishna has instructed. This kingdom, the women, the children, and these treasures are all under your care. I can now give up my life without any worries. Arjuna gathered the ministers and announced, I will take the people of the Vrishni and Andak clans with me to Indraprastha, for the sea will soon submerge this entire city. Therefore, prepare various vehicles and gather the treasures and gems. After we reach Indraprastha, Shri Krishna's grandson, Vajra, will be made your king. We must leave this city as soon as possible. On Arjuna's orders, all the ministers immediately began making preparations. That night, Arjuna stayed in Lord Krishna's palace. The next morning, the mighty Vasudevaji focused his mind and attained the highest state through yoga, leaving the mortal world behind. Arjuna made preparations for Vasudevaji's final rites and funeral procession. When the pyre was set on fire, his 4 wives, Devaki, Rohini, Bhadra, and Madira, unable to bear the grief of separation, followed their husband into the flames, attaining liberation alongside him. Arjuna performed their rites with great reverence. Later, Arjuna also performed the rituals for all those who had perished in the violent war at Prabhas Kshetra. Once the rites were completed, Arjuna boarded his chariot on the 7th day and immediately departed from Dwarka. The caravan included Krishna's widows, children, elderly members of the Yadav clan, and Vajra, Krishna's grandson, who was to be their new leader. Chariots, horses, camels, and carts carried the grief-stricken group. The once proud Yadavas, now vulnerable and broken, followed Arjuna, placing their trust in him to lead them to safety. After they had left, the ocean submerged Dwarka in its waters, engulfing the city and its vast wealth that the people could not carry with them. Arjuna proceeded with slow marches, frequently stopping in pleasant places to allow the women and children to rest. However, their journey was fraught with challenges. As the group traveled through the Panchanad region, a group of robbers, driven by greed, attacked. Seeing the large group of women, children, and treasures being transported, the robbers assumed it would be an easy target. They descended with loud war cries, aiming to loot and abduct. Arjuna, ever the protector, immediately took up his Gandhiv bow to defend the group. However, to his dismay, he found that his divine strength had diminished, and his celestial weapons failed to manifest. He saw that even the elephant riders and charioteers, who had fallen into the hands of the robbers, could not return. The robbers attacked from many sides, and Arjuna did his best to protect them. The robbers began dragging many beautiful women away. Seeing their plight, Arjuna became agitated and started killing the robbers with arrows. However, in an unfortunate moment, all his arrows were exhausted. Grief-stricken and unable to draw any more arrows, Arjuna resorted to using the tip of his bow to continue the fight. The bowstring felt heavy in his hands, a stark reminder of how his powers had waned since Lord Krishna's departure. Despite his valiant efforts, Arjuna could not stop the robbers. Many of Krishna's widows were forcibly taken, their cries for help echoing in the air. The robbers seized the treasures and valuables. Overwhelmed with despair and guilt, Arjuna fought on, but he was no longer the invincible warrior he once was. His strength had faded, his knowledge of weapons seemed lost, and he could no longer control his bow. Even his inexhaustible arrows were quickly wasted. Accepting that all of this was the will of God, Arjuna became very sad and decided not to chase after the robbers. Taking the women who had been saved and the gems that had been spared from looting, Arjuna settled the remaining families of the Vrishni clan. Vajra was given the kingdom of Indraprastha. The widows of Sri Krishna, devastated by the loss of their lord and family, chose different paths. Some entered the fire to join Krishna in the afterlife, while others renounced the world and retreated to the forest for penance. Their lives, marked by devotion and sacrifice, became a testament to their unwavering love for Krishna. After making the necessary arrangements and fulfilling Krishna's last instructions, Arjuna's spirit was heavy with the burden of loss. He visited the ashram of sage Vyas, seeking solace and guidance. In the presence of the great sage, Arjuna reflected on the fleeting nature of life and the inevitability of destiny. This story offers timeless lessons for everyone. It reminds us of the unchanging nature of destiny and the consequences of arrogance, pride, and reckless actions. Even the most divine and powerful beings are not exempt from the cycles of karma and time. The events that unfolded were part of a greater cosmic plan, teaching us to accept life's inevitable changes. We can't control everything, but we can focus on what we can influence and let go of what we cannot. The narrative highlights that every action has consequences. Arrogance and disregard for values lead to destruction, while humility, self-awareness, and living by dharma bring harmony and peace. It shows us that even the greatest heroes, empires, and achievements are temporary and subject to the flow of time. The destruction of the Vrishni clan reminds us that power, relationships, and possessions are fleeting. We must cherish the present and understand that everything, no matter how glorious, will eventually pass. Time controls the rise and fall of all things, giving and taking as it pleases. Respecting time, using it wisely, and remaining detached from outcomes are crucial lessons. Even Lord Krishna, who could change the course of the universe, allowed events to unfold as they were destined. This teaches us to trust the natural cycle of life and death and find peace by accepting the greater cosmic plan. The story encourages us to acknowledge when our role or purpose has been fulfilled. Life is full of transitions, and we must embrace them gracefully, understanding that every end is also a new beginning. Arjuna's grief over losing his strength and weapons reminds us of the impermanence of power and achievements. These are tools meant for a specific purpose and time, not permanent parts of our identity. Challenges and losses are inevitable, but how we respond to them defines our character. Like Arjuna, we must continue to persevere, trust in divine will, and strive to leave a meaningful legacy for future generations. Loss is not the end, it is a transition to something greater. This story teaches us resilience, acceptance, and the wisdom of living in harmony with the cosmic order. It urges us to focus on our duties, let go of attachments, and trust the unfolding of life. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Vibes of Divinity, for more profound insights and inspiring stories. Feel free to share your thoughts, interpretations, or additions to this story in the comments below. We value your contributions to this divine dialogue. Until then, stay inspired.